I'm Dr. Yvonne Cason, the president of Spiritual Awakenings International. Welcome to all of you. We are so proud that Spiritual Awakenings International has grown to be in 98 countries around the world. So please take a moment now and enter into the chat where it is you're joining us from today. I am located in Toronto, Canada. And today's speaker, Reverend Catherine Chapey, is joining us from Long Island, New York in the USA. It is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Reverend Catherine Chapey. Catherine is an ordained interspiritual minister, a spiritual counselor, a certified hypnotist, a spiritual medium and trance channel, who has been having multiple types of spiritually transformative experiences her whole life. She facilitates several experiencer sharing platforms, circles on various platforms, including for us at our Spiritual Awakenings International Experiencer Sharing Circle. I'm also delighted that Catherine serves on our Spiritual Awakenings International Advisory Board. So everyone, please let's welcome Catherine Chapey.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here with all of you. Thank you, Yvonne, for inviting me, and I'm so blessed to be here. Thank you. So I just wanted to share screen real quick and just talk about some of the things that I am currently doing. And this way, if you want to take a screenshot of it, here's my page from Bitly, and I just want to let you know that I'm running sharing groups that I have once a month, and the one that's not on here is called Safe Space Sharing Group, and that's the first Tuesday of the month, and that one is at 7 p.m. Eastern, and everybody is welcome. That's 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you. And then the second one is called UFO ET Experiencers, and that is on the second Tuesday of the month. That one, we usually have a speaker that comes in and shares their story, and then we record it and it goes on to YouTube. And then the third one is called Spiritual Experiencers. And that one, we also have a speaker and we have time for questions and answers. And then that one goes on to YouTube. So anyway, I just wanted to start with that because I wanted to make sure that everybody has that information before I get started. So I'm just going to jump right into my story. And my story really starts when I was born, because I was born premature. I was about 2 months premature. Excuse me. And I was born in the 60s, the early 60s. And back then, they did not allow the parents to hold the babies. So I spent the first month of my life in an incubator, and my mother was not able to hold me. So the reason I bring that up is because I later found out from my spiritual guidance was that I was never really alone. And what I've been shown and what I've been told is that I was actually out of my body most of that time and with my spiritual family. And so I didn't have that feeling of being alone for the first month of my life. And so that's how I started. And so what I want to say is that I had many different things that happened to me as a young child to help me to realize and to know that I'm not just this body. And so some of my earlier memories were waking up and feeling like I couldn't move, and that there was a presence next to me in my room. And I had the fear, I had a real fear of the devil when I was a young child, because I was raised in a religion that really talked a lot about the devil and hell, and we're going to hell if you're not good, and if you're not of this certain denomination, you would go to hell. And if you didn't go to church every Sunday, you would go to hell. So that was really pumped into us at a very early age. And so when I would wake up with this sleep paralysis and feel this presence right next to me, of course, the first thing I thought was it must be the devil, right? So that's some of my earlier memories. And I remember as a little kid, not wanting to put my foot down on the floor. I would jump off my bed because I thought the devil lived under my bed. So that happened. And then I had some severe trauma that happened to me when I was a kid. And I actually had to unlock a door. I had to unlock a door and let somebody in that was very angry and abusive. And so either I unlocked the door and let him in, or he was going to kick the door down, and then it was going to be worse. So I remember my hand on the doorknob and just thinking, either I have to let this happen or I have to wait and it's going to be worse. The next thing I know, I'm out of my body and I'm watching from above as this trauma was taking place. And I thought I was going to die. So that's another earlier memory that I had. I also remember as a kid, I had a very strong connection to Mother Mary and Jesus. And so even though, there was a lot of dogma being taught to us, I had my little prayer book and I would say my little prayers. And so in this prayer book, I took my little First Communion book and I cut it up into made it into my own little prayer book. And I took out all of the dogmatic prayers and just made my own little version of a prayer book. When I made my little prayer book, I would say the little prayers and then I would feel this instant connection to Mother Mary and Jesus. And then whatever I was worrying about or concerned about, it just went away. It just wasn't there anymore. So I remember also, we had these beautiful neighbors and they were Jewish, and we would go over their house as kids because they had kids our age. And I remember always feeling this warmth from the family and feeling just so much love from them. And they treated us like family when we were at their house. My brother and I used to go over there a lot. And I remember I was worried about them because we were being told that if we didn't go to church every Sunday, we would go to hell. So I knew that they didn't go to church because they were Jewish. So I went home, I asked my mother, are they going to go to hell? And she said, yes. And this was just me at a young age questioning, it didn't make sense to me. Didn't make sense. I knew God was love because I had experienced that love when I would read my little prayers, and I just knew that I wasn't being taught the right thing, at a very early age. So my story goes on, and a lot of things happened to me as a kid where I felt like I was going to die, or there were different experiences. I won't go into all of them now, but as I got older and I was an adult, I was working in a job that was predominantly male dominated. And there was a gentleman, he was probably about 10 or 15 years older than me. He was being pushed out of his leadership role in this particular field. And he must have gotten really depressed because he lost his job. I'm sure there were other things going on in his life, but he ended up tragically committing suicide. And it was just a horrific way that he did that. And I mean, it's always horrific, but it was really, really horrible. So shortly after that, I had a dream, and he came to me in my dream. And he was smiling and he said, "Don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm fine." And I was just so happy to see him. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay. I'm so glad you're okay." You know, and then I went back to work the next day and thinking that the guys would be happy to hear from him. I said, "Oh, you know, I had a dream about our coworker and he said he's fine." And then one of the guys made fun of the way he committed suicide and they all laughed. And I was absolutely horrified by that. And so I remember that like clear as day. And then I went home and a couple weeks later, I was telling somebody about that story. I was in a parking lot of a diner and I was telling her about what had happened with him and how these guys, you know, made fun of him, how he came to me in a dream. And next thing you know, he is walking right across the parking lot, looking right at me and looking as if he was just as clear as you and I, you know, he didn't look like a spirit. He looked solid. And there was a couple other people around him and he was kind of walking, you know, with them. But then he looked over at me and I kept going and, oh my God, there he is. There he is. And so that was really amazing because it got me thinking, what is going on? You know, why am I having these experiences with the spirit world? And I was also having different scenarios where I would be talking about my grandfather and I would be smelling his cigar smoke, or I would be, you know, having visitation dream. I had a shared death experience with my other grandfather. So a lot of different things were happening with the spirit world and me. And so I started to get curious about that. And I started to feel like I wanted to have like a community or be part of some kind of a community that was spiritual, but not religious. So I started to Google spiritual communities in my area and I found spiritualism. There was a spiritualist church not too far from me. And there was a couple of them, as a matter of fact. So synchronistically, the very day I looked that up, a friend of mine who had no idea I was even thinking about this called me up and she said, "Hey, Catherine," she goes, "I just went to this fantastic place and I kept thinking of you." She said, "Oh, it's wonderful. It's a spiritualist church and there's a medium that gives messages and there's no dogma. And they're all about the golden rule and equality." She said there are female and male ministers. And she said, and they're really all about personal responsibility, you know? And she said, "I just kept thinking you would love this. You would love this." So I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." You know, I was just looking that up and it was on Google. So the next Sunday I went to the spiritualist church and I was all the way in the back and it was crowded. They had a visiting medium that was there speaking. And so she stood up to start to give messages to people that were in the congregation. And I remember she stood up and she said, "I don't have my glasses on. I can't see, but there's a lady all the way in the back with a fuchsia shirt on." And that was me. And she said, "Can I come to you with a message?" So I said, "Yes." And she said, "Okay." And then she started to give me a message from my grandfather who had just passed away, like not even a year before. And she started to describe him to me. And she started to describe some of our last moments together, which I just was like, "Oh my God, he's here," you know? And then she said to me, "Your grandfather wants you to know, he says, don't pray to me." And I thought, what? And then I realized, oh my God, he must have heard me because the week before I was having a conversation with him in my head and I was asking him to help me with one of my children, right? So my grandfather didn't want me to pray to him. He wanted me to pray to God. So that's what I started to do. I started praying to God, but I also kept my grandfather in the loop because I figured my grandfather has a broader view of what's going on. And he sees now that he's over there, you know, everything that's happening. And so I started to do some automatic writing with him, and he would communicate with me. And but I would pray to God, and I would ask God to help me with my child. And I'll tell you, after that, it was like dominoes. Everything fell into place. Miracles happened that I could not have ever imagined. And things just fell out of the sky, right people at the right place. And a lot of the situations that were happening with my child, really, there were so many doors that opened for her. And prior to that, it was, years and years of doors being slammed shut and not knowing what to do. So that was a magical time, and it really helped me to understand that when I pray to God and I talk to my higher guidance, which I call God, and I ask my spirit team, which is my grandpa's on my spirit team, and there are many others, and we all have that. They help me, and my grandfather would assure me, "Don't worry, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out," and a lot of it really did. It was perfect at the time. So I stayed at the Spiritualist church, and I stayed in, they had unfoldment classes every week. And I sat in those circles for 8 or 9 years every week to develop our mediumship and be able to give messages to the congregation. And it was a really beautiful time in my life. But the first thing that we needed to do was to learn how to meditate and quiet our minds. And we had this wonderful mediumship teacher, and he was also a spiritualist minister. And he would take us on these beautiful guided meditations. And I found that very helpful because at the time I had this monkey mind that was, I thought I was never going to be able to learn how to meditate or to quiet that mind. But the guided meditations that he would bring us on really helped me to do that. And he would always take us on guided meditations with the intention to connect in with the divine and also to connect in with the spirit world to be able to give us messages that were helpful and healing to others. And so that's what we did. And we would also work on expanding our consciousness so that we could connect more deeply in with the spirit world and learn to distinguish between, whether we were getting a male or female. And it was all of that. And it was just so wonderful. So shortly after that, I was able to start giving messages up at the podium on Sundays. And I love doing that. So shortly after I learned how to meditate, we started to ask to meet our spirit guides. And what happened was the first time I asked to meet my spirit guide, I was in circle with the group, and I saw the bottom of her robe and her foot. And I thought, ooh, I just saw my spirit guide's foot and the bottom of her robe. But I was curious, and I thought, okay, let's see what's going to happen. So I would go home and I would also meditate, not for hours and hours, but I would do it. I would try to do it regularly for about 20 minutes, a half hour. At least 3 or 4 times a week. And I would go home and I would do that. And then I got, more curious about my spirit guides. And I was thinking about them one night, and I'm like, I wonder who my spirit guides are. And then I went to sleep. And in the morning, as I was waking up, I started to see them one after another, after another, after another. And I was in 2 worlds at once. And it was beautiful. Prior to that, I had been asking in the Spiritualist church during a meditation, I had been asking to know God. And so after I asked to know God, what happened with me is I started to be taken out of body. I would wake up and I'd be laying in my bed, and all of a sudden my walls would disappear, and I was out in the cosmos, and I was traveling through the heavens, and I knew I was with them. I didn't know who they were yet, but I knew that they were with me and I wasn't alone. And at one point, we went to a place that was this opening in the heavens, and I knew I couldn't go any further. I had to watch from a certain distance, and there was an opening in the heavens, and this opening behind it was kind of like a doorway, but it wasn't symmetrical. And behind this were these flames of light, and I could feel all of this love. And at the time, I was having these unitive experiences where I was feeling the love of God, and it was just so beautiful. It like permeated every cell of my being and more. And I was also having these expansive experiences, and I was having these oneness experiences with my trees that are here on my property. So at one point, I merged in with my trees, and I knew what it was like to be part of my trees. And I found out that they are beautiful sentient beings that love. They just love us, and they're here to protect us. And I felt so protected by my Leland cypress trees, which are huge on my property. And I also merged in with the ocean. So I knew what it was like to be part of the ocean. And I knew what it was like to be part of the sand. I just was having these merging experiences with different things that we don't think of as, as being beings, but these were beings, and I could feel that. And then, so that was happening prior to when I met my guides. But the thing that happened to me was that I felt like I was reborn during that time, because at one point, I also felt like I knew the answers to everything. And of course, that didn't stay with me, unfortunately. But at one point, I felt that. So I went through all of this bliss, and I felt reborn at that time. And that was late 2007. And then in early 2008, when I started to ask to meet my spirit guides, and they started coming to me one morning, was just another profound experience. I was merging in with different guides. One point, I saw an elephant being, and I was merging in with him, and he was one with me. And I remember seeing his trunk like growing out of me, and feeling just this absolute love. And I was going to these spontaneous yoga poses. And at the time, I was not doing yoga. Not in this life. I don't do yoga in this life, but my body just knew how to go into these yoga poses. And I remember I went to touch the foot of my bed. I had a one of those beds with like a sleigh bed. I went to touch the foot of the sleigh bed, and all of this like electric light came out of my hand, and I was like, whoa, and then I just stopped. And I looked over at my cat, and my cat used to sleep above my head every night for months and months, literally curled up above my head like this. And I looked over at him, he was on my bed, and it looked like he was almost going into cat yogic poses, believe it or not. And I thought, wow, little guy's really into this energy. And then it dawned on me that he had been protecting my crown chakra for months and months and months. And so I just, went back in and was just, in with all of that energy and meeting different guides. And then my two main guides came to me, and my two main guides were Mother Mary and Jesus. And when they were in front of me, I turned into a little child. I was a little 2-year-old in front of them. And it was just beautiful. And when Jesus was in front of me, my soul just bowed in front of him. And then my guides surrounded me in this, the only way I can describe it is that it was like almost like a trampoline. Okay. And I was on the trampoline, and all of my guides were around it in this big circle, and they were holding up this material. And I was this little child, and I was jumping up and down on the trampoline, and I was going really high. And then I would look down at them, and all I could see is their smiling faces, just looking up at me, adoring me and sending me so much love. And I could feel how much they loved me. And they were so happy that I was trusting them, you know, and they were just enjoying me being my true essence in that moment. And so I'll never forget that. I spent a lot of time with Mother Mary, and she channeled a lot of things through me. And she also taught me how to meditate and to connect in with that very deep part of ourselves. Very simple meditation. And so after that, I was aware of a presence that was communicating with me, and he was the only being that I couldn't see. He was very intense, but very loving. And he worked with me for hours and hours. And when I was working with him, I started to do this like hand signals to my heart. And it was a connection that was being downloaded into right straight into my heart. And so this being, like I said, he was working with me for hours, and it was almost like I was being tested. I was going to be tested on this. I had to remember what it was that he was downloading into my heart. And a lot of this was very symbolic. A lot of it was just on a soul level. It's hard to put into words. He knew everything about me. And but like I said, he's the only one I couldn't see. And so that to me was very interesting, because the other ones I could see them, and I knew who they were from different times in history and different religious figures. So after that, you know, I was told by my guides, by my guidance, that they wanted me to see what it was like for people to have spiritual awakenings, because they said many people will be waking up. And that they said that they wanted me to see what it was like for people that are going to be having these kind of experiences. And so I was being told, oh, you know, you need to go see a mental health provider, or, you know, you're having a breakdown, because I was talking to my loved ones in spirit, and I was talking about my guides, and, you know, people were getting freaky about it that were around me, and that triggered them, and they thought that I was, you know, something wasn't right with me. But I knew 1000% that what I was experiencing was the true reality, because it was 1,000 times more real than this reality. And I knew that God was with me, that God is love, and that this was happening for a reason. Like this was, you know, part of my awakening. And shortly after that, I found out about the word Kundalini Awakening and spiritual awakening. And so I knew this is what I had experienced. And they assured me during this time that my guides, that this was part of my initiation, and that this is what people are going through. And they told me that I'm going to be helping people, and that in the future, I'll be able to help people because I have already gone through this kind of thing. So I got curious, and I said, well, what am I going to be doing? And I said, am I going to be doing healing work? And they're like, oh, you'll see. And then I'm like, oh, you know, what am I going to be doing? And they go, well, you're going to be speaking, you're going to be working with groups and speaking. At the time, I was deathly afraid of public speaking. And I said, oh my God, they said, don't worry, Grandpa's going to help you. He's going to work with you on that, you know? And so, you know, they don't want to give you too much, right? If you're not ready for it. So this was back in 2007. So now we're at 2024. It's been a lot of years. So I had to work through a lot of things. But yeah, so that was a big part of my spiritual awakening. And then over time, I got involved in all kinds of healing. I learned about all different types of healing modalities, and I learned about quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is working with the higher self of the client. And the client is able to connect to their higher self and ask any questions that they have. And there's a whole healing modality around that. So I stayed in the Spiritualist church for many years. And then in 2015, I left the spiritualist church, and I felt that there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes that I was not in alignment with. And so I didn't feel that it would be right for me to stay. So I left with a broken heart, but I did move on. And my guide told me, she said, don't worry, that was just part of your schooling. She said, you're going to be moving on to other things. And I'm like, really, where is it? Because I don't know, there's nothing there, nobody's here now, because I left like a family of people. I felt like they were like family to me. So shortly after that, that was in 2015. And then in 2016 is when all kinds of things started to happen. There's my little prayer book that I was telling you guys about earlier. And all right. And so I know I told you the story about the being that was with me for hours and hours, and I didn't know who he was. And so a whole year went by, and I kept thinking about my Kundalini awakening, which was so powerful and beautiful. And I kept wondering who this being was. So before I went to sleep one night, I asked who he was. And in the morning, I saw this interdimensional ship that appeared in my mind's eye. And above it, it said the word Metatron. And in front of that was a Merkaba. And so, of course, I didn't really know who Metatron was at the time, but then I Googled it, and Metatron is an archangel, and he works with and the Merkaba is the sign for interdimensional travel. So Metatron, there's Metatron's cube, which is the Merkaba on steroids. And he works with sacred geometry. He's also the overseer of the Akashic records, and he is actually he works directly with God. He is the scribe for God. And so he was a beautiful being, and I'm so blessed that I have had that experience with him. All right. So, I want to go back before I go into that. So I did want to talk a little bit about my experience with the spiritualist church. We used to have these teachers that would come in and give us classes. And so one day we had a class about orbs. And so they talked to us about orbs, and then they had this black sheet of, it was this material that they hung up, and you'd stand in front of it, and then with intention, we would call in our loved ones. And so I called in my grandfather and my grandmother, and I said, please come visit me, or come, show yourself in an orb. And if not in an orb, just let me know you're here in some way. So the guy took the picture, and here I am had like a black sheet on, and he took the picture, and everyone behind, now at that time, we didn't have the cell phones like we do now. He was using a 35 millimeter, and everyone was standing behind him, and they went, oh, like that. And then I was like, oh, I wonder what happened. So then when he developed the picture, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, look at that. Look at those orbs. So now I went home, I put my glasses on, right? And once I put my glasses on, I could see this picture, this orb right here is my grandfather's face. I don't know if you can see it. Here's his ear, his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. And you could see the whole shape of his head. Now it looks just like my grandpa, and it is exactly like the picture that used to hang in his house that my mother painted of him. And it hung there for years and years and years. And he looks like he's talking in my ear. So I don't know if you can see that. I can see it pretty clearly. And then my grandmother came in over here. I don't know if you could see her face. She's right in the middle of the orb. She's not completely, she's visible, but she almost looks a little skeleton-y. Sorry, Grandma, but she's definitely in there. You can see her, like the shape of her face, a nose, the eyes, and then the mouth there. And then on the top, it looked like this beautiful blue-green orb, and it reminded me of the earth. And I was like, wow, look at that. I was just blown away. I was blown away by that picture. So that's what happened. That's what happened during my spiritualism days. And so that really got me to understand that spirits can travel in these orbs. That's part of their technology. So in 2016, I started to get this feeling like I wanted to go outside and take some pictures, but I was in my room. And at the time I had started channeling, I was trans channeling a group of beings, and it was just starting to happen. So I was getting filled with all of this energy and all of this love. My heart was just expanding, and I was feeling like this buzzing in my heart. So I couldn't sleep, and I took a video, and then this beautiful periwinkle orb showed up in my room. And when I was laying in bed the next morning, I had my eyes closed, and I saw this beautiful ship, light ship, go over my house. And at the same time, this light ship flew over my house in my meditation. It sounded like a jet airplane flew over my house at the same time, and it jolted me out of my meditation. But this is what I saw, but it was like a crystal. It was crystal, this beautiful, beautiful light ship. And I jumped out of my meditation, and I went into my living room. My phones weren't working. Everything was like blinking, like my cell phone, my regular phone wasn't working. My TV was wonky. And outside there were these black helicopters flying over my house. So I was like, oh my God, you know, and then I went back into meditation, and I said, what was that? And I heard in my head, that was us. Did you like that? And I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. That was beautiful. And then shortly after that, well, this was around Mother's Day in 2016. And my daughter had put this little, I don't know if you can see it, says, let your light shine, on the glass door on the patio. And this was just part of some of the synchronicities that were happening. So that night, I still couldn't sleep, and I felt like going outside and taking pictures. So I took pictures from left to right. And so this is one of the pictures. I went back inside, and I saw this thing floating in my yard. And then the next picture, there were these, I don't know if you can see it. There, this is the deck of my patio. And I mean, I'm sorry, this is the deck of my pool. And so on the side of the deck, you can see there are felines. There's a lion up here, and there's a cat right over here. There's another one in here. And I thought, this is incredible, because every morning I was waking up to these feline beings, different types of felines, all different kinds, black panthers. I mean, you name it, those were the different kind of cats I saw. Lions, tigers, every kind of cat or feline imaginable. And now they're kind of showing up in this, it's kind of like an ectoplasma that shows up on the photography. And then, well, I didn't go into this whole story because this is another long story, but Mother Mary had, well, I'll just tell you what happened here. Okay, so this is, there was a portal of light that was showing all the way to the right. And then I wasn't able to get the videos on this presentation, but out of this portal of light, I have on film where there's a quick little thing that happens. And when I slow down the video, at one point, there's like a salmon color or golden colored disc. And then on top of it, in just one little snippet, is this green orb, which is right here. Okay. So I'm going to go on with the story, and then you'll understand it. Okay. So after these pictures happened, wait, I have to go back. Sorry. I guess I have to explain this part. So prior to that, I was waking up, and Mother Mary was in my room, and she was actually asking me to take my crystal. I had a clear quartz crystal, and it was at like 1 in the morning. I was sleeping, and I woke up to her, And she was holding my crystal in her hands like this. And then she wanted me to put my crystal on my altar and have it face towards my crown. And that's what I did. And then after that, all of this stuff happened. Okay. So now the next night I went outside again and I took pictures from left to right. And so this is the left side of my yard. Okay. And I noticed this white line coming down and like this little thing on the ground. So I bring the picture in and here it is, this little green thing and this white line. But then I notice on my shed is what looks to me like Mother Mary. And she's looking towards the back of my yard where I have a medicine wheel now. And so I don't know if you can see her, but I can see her pretty clearly. And I'll just go over her head. Okay, this is like the bottom of her robe here. This is the outline of her head right here. Okay. And she goes to, whoops, let me bring her back. I'm sorry. Okay. Here's her eye, and then here's another eye. Here's her nose, and here's her mouth. And then her chin is right here. And she's looking this way. Can you see that, Yvonne?
A little bit.
Okay. All right. And then that next night, I took another picture, and this is the same where the portal of light had come down in the same place. And that was the next night. And then there was an orb that was floating in the yard. And then a little while later, this was in July, I believe this was like July, I don't remember the exact date. I was sitting in the backyard and I saw this light up in the tree. And here's the tree. This is the tree in the next door neighbor's yard, and it's like right up against my fence. And this kind of hangs over my yard. And then I looked at that orb more closely, and inside that orb, sometimes it's hard to see with these kind of pictures because they can overlap, but I don't know if you can see the picture of my cat. There's the little cat face right there. And this is my little kitten that we just got. And he showed up in the orb that was in my tree. Are you able to see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then next to the little cat, or underneath the cat, there is a little fairy right here. You can see the eye, the other eye, and the little mouth. And she's got like little pointy ears here and here. And she looks like a little cherub. She's very cute. And then she's sharing an eye with a lion who's looking right here. This is his eye. Here's his other eye. Let me go back. Sorry about that. Okay. And then here's his little mouth right here. He's got his mouth open. You can see his little nose right there. They're kind of sharing an eye, the two of them. But the fascinating part about that picture too is that a week before I was in meditation and I was asking to see my book of life, my Akashic record book, and my book opened up, and underneath my book, the book was on a podium, was this little fairy and a lion being. And they were both in my meditation the week before, and they both showed up in my tree, in the light in my tree. That was that when I took the picture, I could see them. And how my cat got in there, I will never know. I'll have to ask him when I pass, because he crossed over when he was 2 years old. But yeah, I thought that was amazing that he was able to do that. So then these lights kept showing up, and they were showing up in the trees all along the right side of my house, over by where that portal was, a little bit to the back. And I was out there, I was talking to the lights in the trees, and I was asking them to come down the tree. So like these are two different separate pictures of them, and it started to come down the tree. This is one that I enlarged a little bit so you can see it. And then here's another one where it's kind of spinning and morphing. And then as I was asking to learn more about it, all of a sudden I see this disc, this salmon colored disc that flies in. And so I kept following it with my cell phone and filming it. And then there it is over my house. Now it looked much bigger to me than this. This looks just like a little dot, but in my vision, it looked a lot larger than that. And here it is again. There's two of them actually. You can see them here and here. And then this is where it was flying over, and it was like a triangular formation. And it actually moved in unison. So it looked like it was one piece, but it was at each three little disc shapes. And then at one point I could see this, salmon colored disc that was flying so low over my house. I could actually see a being in it looking out at me. And I was blown away. And I was out there with my camera, and I was like, oh my God, you guys are here. You guys are here. I'm so happy. I always knew you would come. It was wonderful. And so what I noticed was that, there were all these little green orb type things flying around really fast. And these looked smaller than the salmon colored discs in my vision. But in the camera, when I looked at it, it actually did the opposite. So the green orbs were bigger and the salmon discs were a lot smaller. So it was like the opposite of what I was seeing, which really blew me away. And then there you go. You can see it in the next picture, how it's flying by, right? And there it is, okay? And now when it would turn a corner, something really interesting would happen. It would actually collapse and turn into a disc shape. So now it's an orb shape moving fast, but then it would, okay, so here we go. Now it's going to turn the corner, and there it is. See the disc shape here? And then it turns the corner real like a right-hand turn, and super fast, like so super. You have no idea how hard it was for me to screenshot that. I had to keep trying to find it. That's how fast it was. And there it goes. It turns into an orb shape again. And then it goes, and it's flying off. So let me get it back. Okay. And there was, we're in the way. Hold on. And there it is again with the orb shape. All right. So yeah, so that was some of my pictures that I took during that time. That was in 2016. I was actually able to take that on video, and I have tons of phenomena like that, but even more, even more. And I didn't want to overkill with all of that, but I was happy to show that to all of you. Those were such exciting times in my life. And so at that point, I started to channel a collective, and they call themselves the Council of Light. And who they are is part of my higher self, God, and my team of beings that work with me. And these beings are from all different dimensions. And I've had lifetimes with many of these beings. Mm-hmm. And they started to come to me and show themselves to me in my mind's eye as I'm channeling, or they would show themselves to me in so many different fun, synchronistic, creative, loving ways. Some of the things that they would do that's really funny is that I would see them in my mind's eye as I was channeling. And when I channel, I get messages that are of like a higher wisdom. And the messages are to help me in my life and my path, but also to help other people. And it's about our connection to God, to Source, and that we are all one, and that we're not just here on this planet alone. We have many other beings that are here with us, but many of us are starting to see them. And some, people aren't yet, but people are very aware that they're here. And so these beings are loving, they are heart-centered, and they've been with us since the beginning of time. and they really want to work with us, and they really want to be part of our team. They're part of our family and our lineage, and that's what I've come to discover. So some of the ways they come through is I will be channeling, and I'll see a certain being, and then I'll go in the bathroom, and they'll be in my shag rug. There's like a picture of the being that I just saw, that I was talking to, or that was speaking through me when I was channeling. And they also show up in the clouds. You can see them in all different ways, in the trees. I've had streaks of light that show up in my yard, and there's different beings in those. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. So does anybody have any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine, for that absolutely fascinating sharing. I invite all of you to put your questions into the chat if you have some questions for Catherine. And I'd like to introduce Robert Baer, the Vice President of Spiritual Awakenings International. He's going to be moderating the question and answer period. Robert, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kaysan. And I've been looking forward to this presentation for quite some time. And as Catherine knows, I've been working on a project that is near Area 51 in the desert, Nevada desert. So my interest has really piqued on this because of the people that I've been dealing with and the stories I've heard. So I'm going to start this off with a question. What geographical areas are known for UFO sightings? Is there any that come to your mind?
Well, I mean, there are many all over the world. I know Long Island is a hot spot. That's where I'm from. Upstate New York is another hot spot. California is another hot spot. Hawaii. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but the most important thing is that they can appear anywhere, and you don't have to go anywhere for them to appear. They can come into your home, and I know they have, okay? And they can appear anywhere. So they can appear in our dreams, they can appear in our meditations, they can appear in our yard, they can appear in our consciousness, when we're just having, a thought or a dream or a knowing. So yeah, you don't have to travel to have a UFO experience. You can have one right here.
Well, the questions are starting to come in, but I have one more. Are there common characteristics expressed by individuals that you've encountered, your colleagues or people that you interact with, that are exposed to a UFO experience?
Well, I can only talk from my own experiences, and based on what I know from people that have been part of my sharing groups. I've been running UFO ET experiences groups since 2016. And what I have found was the first time I had that group, 24 people showed up. And people were having experiences across the board, not just UFO ET, but they were having all kinds of experiences with spirit world. They were having all kinds of different types of phenomena, angelic experiences, out-of-body experiences, mediumistic experiences, on and on and on. So yeah, I think that people that are having all kinds of spiritually transformative experiences, spiritual experiences, are also very open to having these kind of experiences. I think we have been programmed to believe that these experiences are negative or primarily negative because of what's been out there in the what's put out in the movies and TV about ET being, taking over the earth and coming after us, but that is not the case. Most experiencers will agree that these experiences are beautiful, loving, healing. And there's new data that is out there now that was compiled by a gentleman named Ray Hernandez. And he wrote a book called Beyond UFOs. And that book was the very first research study that was conducted for contactees. And there were over 4,300 people that partook in this extensive surveys that Ray put out. And I was one of those people, very happily. And what he found was that people are having across the board all kinds of experiences, not just UFO ET. They're having NDEs, STEs, OBEs, you know, all kinds of experiences like that. And what he also found is that when the people were asked, would they want those experiences to stop? Would they want their UFO ET experiences to end? I think about 95% of the people said, absolutely not. I want them to continue. So, and people that are afraid and have had what they feel were negative experiences, usually those are people that only have a remembrance of one experience, and they seem to have gotten stuck in that fear and are less willing to look further into it and be open to exploration about what their connection is to those beings. And when that happens, it's kind of sad because they're not able to really get past that fear. But the people that are more willing to understand it at a deeper level and understand their connection to these beings, usually they're having more experiences, and it's not a fearful experience. It's more of a heart-centered experience for them. So
Thank you for that answer. And for those of us in the audience, Ray Hernandez is a friend of Spiritual Awakenings International. And if you look at our catalog of videos, you'll see that he's spoken for us a couple of times.
Twice, yes.
He's awesome.
From the chat, this is from Dick. What about Ascension? What about Earth changes?
What about Ascension and Earth changes? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what I was told is that we are all ascending. And I was really, I remember this was in 2008. I was outside by my mailbox and my guides were talking to me and they were telling me that we're all ascending and that we're all going to go. And I asked, well, where are we going? I never even heard of the Ascension before that. I was like, what are you talking about? Where are we going? They said, no, it's happening here. It's happening on the earth and everybody is going. And I said, everybody? And they said, everybody. And I remember I asked, even my ex-husband? And they said, even your ex-husband. And I thought, wow, this is big. Right? Because at the time I was a little bitter, but I thought, well, if he can go, if he's going, we're all going. But that being said, yes, I was told that we are all definitely going to go. And yeah, these earth changes are part of it. You know, this is all part of it. It's part of the birthing process. You know, the birthing process is not an easy process. All of us women and men, you've been in the rooms. We all know it is not an easy process. So that's what we're going through now. And there are many of us that are here that understand that, you know, we are eternal beings and we're not going anywhere. I mean, if it ends for us here, we're just continuing it on and we're just going to keep on going. So there's nothing to fear. And we're all in this together and we will all eventually be going to a higher state of consciousness, which is what the Ascension is all about. So thank you.
Next question is from Carol. You had a couple comments. Wonderful. Thank you. I wonder how you navigate between the seen and the unseen worlds.
Yeah. Well, how do you navigate between you know, it can be challenging. It can be challenging because what I have found on my journey is that once I opened up to this new life, and this new way of being. I no longer felt like I fit in too much with the old stuff. And that can be challenging because, you know, sometimes people fall away and things change in life. But, you know, I realize that it's all really for the highest and best good. And so, yeah, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs in my life. I've gone through a lot of really dark nights of the soul, but I've always felt really, really blessed to know that I have that knowing in this lifetime that I'm not alone, even though I feel like I am when I'm, you know, really struggling. And what my guides have told me is that, you know, when I'm really struggling, or when I'm really in a, like a, you know, a place of fear, it is harder for them to connect with me, because in order for us to connect with our higher wisdom and our higher guidance, and to you know, connect with spirit, we have to raise our vibration. Okay, because their vibration is up here. We have to raise ours, and they have to lower theirs in order for us to meet in the middle. But when I go through periods in my life where I'm, you know, sad and depressed and worrying and fearful, my vibration is way down. Yeah. And so I can't hear them, right? And I think that that's what happens. So yeah, that can be part of the challenge, and it's not always an easy street. You know, the spiritual path is not for the weary or the weak. We really have to go through the trenches, and there's a lot of healing that's involved with this kind of work. So, and a lot of learning and a lot of growing, and that takes huge amounts of work. But yeah, but it all works out. And what I find for me is, now that I'm past a lot of those challenges, the thing that really makes me happy is service, and my connection to God, and my connection to my beings, and working with people and working with experiencers. A lot of experiencers feel very alone. They feel very isolated, and they don't have people to talk to. And that's a really, really difficult thing, to feel alone in the world. So that's why I'm so happy there are groups like Spiritual Awakenings International. We have the sharing circles, and also my groups that I have, and there are other groups out there like IONS, and there are a lot of affiliate groups. So there, a lot of us are getting together now, and we're not alone anymore. We can speak our truth, and not feel like we're getting that blank stare, or that the sound of crickets, right? Or changing the subject to football. Yeah, it's really nice. It's nice to talk to people that actually have something to say after you share your experience that they can relate to. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
The next question in the chat is from Jenny, and it's actually two questions, but they piggyback each other. Catherine, what recommendations would you have for connecting or seeing your spirit guides? That's one. Also, is there a need, and to what extent, to have discernment around beings in terms of assessing whether they are of light or of the dark? Like if I see a being, how do I know that it is a spirit guide helper or a dark entity? Thank you.
Those are great questions. And who was that, Jenny?
Jenny, yes.
Jenny. Okay, so the first one I'm going to answer is about your spirit guides. So we all have a team. We all have spirit guides. We all have helpers. And of course, we all know we're all connected to God, source, higher power. And these beings, they are waiting for us to connect with them. They adore us. We have had lifetimes with them, lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And they're not all human. Many of them are from other dimensions, other planets. And I was shown once, if I stood at the end of the ocean and just looked out, that the amount of beings that I'm connected to, that want to help me, that love me, would fill up the whole area that I could see with my eyes. That's how many I mean, I can't even wrap my brain around that, you know? So what I would encourage is to keep asking, you know? Once you're asking with sincerity and pureness of heart, they will show themselves, and be open to anything. Try not to have expectations about how they can come in, because they can come in so many ways. It is mind-blowing, the things they can do. Keep track of anything, synchronicities, dreams, you know, keep a journal of those kind of things, because the more you pay attention to it, the more it happens. And what we pay attention to grows. So when we pay attention to these things, it grows. And don't give up, you know, don't give up. Ask before you go to sleep at night. And, you know, be like that little kid that's tugging on its mom's pants or dress. Mom, mom, mom. I heard this, I think, at your conference, Yvonne. Mom, 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 mom. That's the one who's going to get the attention. That's the one who's going to get the answer, right? But don't try too hard. All right, let it happen. Just know that it's going to happen. Know that you're connected, and ask, and it will be given. Ask and it is given. Yeah. I've met people in my journey that have wanted to know spirit, have wanted to see spirit face to face, and see spirit like, you know, our minister did, our spiritualist minister did. And that person, because she was lonely and didn't want to be alone, and she also wanted to be a famous medium and have a TV show and make a lot of money, a spirit that was, let's just say he was not of the light, he was more of a trickster kind of spirit, came in. And she believed that he was, you know, her spirit guide. And then she started to have, what happened was her personality changed, and I could tell it wasn't even her anymore. And she was saying some mean things to people. And then, you know, I had a talk with her, and she ended up leaving that community, and just, yeah. But it came from a place of fear. She didn't want to be alone, and she wanted to be famous and make money. So those are more egoic reasons for somebody to want to connect with spirit. And so, so I would say to really make sure that you are wanting to do that for the reasons that are of integrity and light. And then you won't have problems with the spirit that you can connect to or that you attract. And I'm not saying that there would never be a spirit that might try to get in, or a trickster spirit that might try to play around, but you can feel that. You always call in your guides, call in God, call in the light before you do any kind of spiritual work. And if anything tries to get in and you're not comfortable with it, you ask it to leave, or you tell it to leave, okay? Because we are always our own authority. And if you don't want something in your energy field, you tell it to go, and it has to leave. There are ways to protect yourself also, where you can, you know, surround yourself in a bubble of light, or a column of light, and you call in your guides and God, and that. And part of this is learning about discernment, because not everything is, you know, not everything is pure and light. I mean, there are opposing energies out there. So, but I wouldn't be afraid of it, because once you fear it, you feed it. So just know that you are a divine being, and that you work with the light, and those are some of the things that you can do. Thank
We're
you.
starting to run out of time, but we have a few more questions. Let's see if we can get through them. This is from Dana. Awesome presentation, Catherine. How do you keep from being overwhelmed by all these experiences?
Well, when I sit down to do a PowerPoint, I feel like my head's going to explode. But that's about, I do get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed by the amount of experiences that I've had, but in a good way, in a really, really happy way. Yeah, I consider myself really, really blessed, and I don't see it as a negative at all. Actually, I'm at my best when I am doing this kind of work, and I'm my happiest when I'm connecting with this energy and with all of you and the people in the sharing group. So, yeah.
Thank you. This is from Carol. In 1982, I went through a walk-in experience, a soul exchange as described by Ruth Montgomery back in 1979. I like to be connected with people who have gone through the same experience. What do you recommend?
Yeah. Well, what is her name? Ruth? Is her
Carol.
name? Oh, I'm sorry, Carol. Okay. No, that was the lady she channeled. All right. Yeah. So there are people out there that are that identify themselves as walk-ins, and they are a lot of them are in the UFO, ET, and spiritual communities. So I think that if you are part of these sharing groups, you will be able to find out how to meet them. And if you want to email me, I can talk to you about that more directly. Okay.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions. This is from Dan. Just as an FYI for those interested, the work of Dr. Stephen Greer is fascinating with respect to using higher consciousness to connect with interdimensional beings. And Marissa, this is to you, Catherine. I've heard of a guardian alien. Can you explain how the alien knows who to choose the human they will be guarding? Does everyone have one? Thank you.
So a guardian angel, guardian alien, is that
Yes.
what she means? Yeah. Okay. So, well, it's my understanding that based on my own spiritual journey, what I've learned is that before I came here, I sat down with my group of beings that are kind of helping me with my soul evolution. And we formed a plan. Okay. And so I think this is, whether people, want to take this or not, this is just my own experience. But what I understand is that I do have a guardian angel, but I also have, team that works directly with me. I have like my main guides and then other guides that come in at different times during my life that have helped me through different challenges and things. And then others step in as I progress. But I think that it is a mutual agreement between myself and my team. And it happens before I come into this incarnation. And so I think we're more at the wheel than we realize. We have a destiny, but we also have free will. And so free will is where we make choices every day about how we're going to live our lives and what we're going to do. And if we're going to move towards our destined path that we kind of planned out before we came here. And if we move the other direction, we start to feel it. But yeah, that's my understanding of it. We all have a tremendous amount of help, and we all have our own spirit guides and our own angels that work with us primarily, but we're also part of that decision.
Thank you. This will be the last question.
Okay.
This is from Marina. For years, I've been seeing not orbs, but a spark or small ball of energy, almost like a tiny star. Are these different from orbs? To me, they feel like they are.
Very nice. Yeah. So is she seeing them in her mind's eye or in daylight or at nighttime, or does she say?
She doesn't elaborate.
Okay. Yeah, well, I would go with what you feel, because usually what that initial feeling that you're getting is correct. So if you feel like it's different, then it must be that you must have some kind of connection to those lights. And yeah, I'd be curious to hear what that is.
Actually, she just put something in the chat. I see them everywhere during the day.
Oh, nice. Oh, very nice. Yeah, they have your back. That's exciting. I wonder if you could get some pictures of them. That'd be fun.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Robert, for moderating the question and answer period. It was an absolutely fascinating presentation, Catherine. Thank you for sharing so openly and beautifully about some of your really beautiful STEs. My experience, just to throw it in, is that once one's had one sort of spiritual awakening experience, one sort of STE, it seems to make people's consciousness more open to these transdimensional orb and ET UFO experiences. And then similarly, it works the other way. In my experience, counseling experiencers, if their first experience is a UFO ET experience, that makes them more open to other types of STEs, and they might find themselves later on in life having a near-death experience. So I confirm what you're observing, Catherine, that it's like they're all connected.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's why I was so excited to hear about Ray's work back in 2016, because I had been having these experiences my whole life. And then I'm like, oh my God, someone is studying this and putting it all together.
That's right. He did very, very important
So
work.
validating, you know?
Yes,
It really is.
indeed. Indeed. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Catherine. It was phenomenal.